My name is Daniel Morgan. I'm 26, from Chicago, though if you met me, you'd probably guess younger. I've still got that restless, slightly uncertain look about me that people never let me forget. I work in marketing at a mid-sized publishing house, the kind of job that lets me talk about books all day but also slowly bleeds me dry with office politics and deadlines. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it My Friend's Sister Said, Take Responsibility. I never touched her. It begins on a wet Friday evening in November, the kind of night when the rain feels like it wants to carve itself into your bones. I was sitting in a dimly lit bar near the office, nursing a whiskey after another brutal week. Deadlines missed, campaigns falling flat, coworkers whispering about who was on their way out next. I wanted to be invisible. Then Ethan walked in. Ethan Jacobs, my college roommate, my brother in all but blood. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years, not since he took a banking job in New York. He spotted me instantly, his face splitting into the same reckless grin I remembered. "Danny boy," he shouted over the clinking glasses. "You look like someone stole your dog." "What the hell, man?" We embraced, laughed, caught up on everything we'd missed. His life sounded dazzling. Expensive suits, late nights on Wall Street, women he didn't bother naming. Mine felt small in comparison, but Ethan never made me feel less. That was his gift. Then he said, almost casually, "You know who's in town? My sister, Clara." I hadn't heard her name in years, but it landed like a thunderclap. She was 3 years younger than us, sharp-tongued, magnetic, the girl who used to hang around our apartment in college and argue with me about everything. Music, politics, whether cereal counted as soup. I'd crushed on her in secret, though she'd only ever teased me, never seriously looked my way. "She's back?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "Yeah, she transferred to Northwestern for grad school. You should come by tomorrow. We're doing a little family dinner." The Jacobs family lived in a tall, creaking house on the north side, full of books and framed photos. Walking in the next evening felt like stepping into another life. Ethan's parents hugged me warmly, but my eyes found Clara almost immediately. She was at the far end of the dining table, lit by the soft glow of a chandelier. Her dark hair had grown longer, spilling over her shoulders. Her features sharpened into something both elegant and fierce. She looked up, saw me, and smiled. Not the mocking smirk I remembered, but something gentler, almost curious. "Daniel Morgan," she said. "I thought you'd disappeared." "I was hiding from you," I replied, and she laughed, low and musical. Dinner was a blur of stories, arguments, wine. I kept sneaking glances at her, trying to decipher what had changed. She seemed both older and more guarded, like she carried secrets under her skin. Afterward, Ethan pulled me outside for a smoke, and we stood on the porch while the wind rattled the trees. "She's been through some stuff," he said quietly, flicking ash into the night. "Bad breakup. Don't ask too much." I nodded, though my chest ached with questions. Weeks passed. Clara and I began running into each other, first at a bookstore cafe, then at the gym, once even on the train. Each time, it felt like the city itself was conspiring to bring us together. Slowly, cautiously, we started talking. At first, it was safe territory, books, movies, her classes. Then it grew deeper. She told me about sleepless nights, about panic attacks she didn't want her family to know about. I confessed how small my life felt, how I worried I'd never be enough for anyone. "You're enough," she said once, simply, as though it was obvious. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. But the closer we grew, the more complicated things became. At work, I was struggling with my boss, Meredith, who seemed determined to break me. She assigned impossible deadlines, then scolded me when I failed to meet them. My anxiety soared, and every time Clara texted me, "You okay? Want to talk?" I felt torn between relief and guilt, because Ethan didn't know. He was my brother, and this was his sister. I told myself we were just friends, just late-night conversations, just coffee runs, just the occasional touch of her hand on mine when we laughed too hard. But inside, something burned hotter every day. Then came the night everything cracked. It was another family gathering. Ethan had dragged me along, insisting I was part of the furniture. After dinner, Clara pulled me into the kitchen to help with dishes. The house was loud with laughter, clinking glasses, but in the kitchen it was just us, the low hum of running water and the pounding of my heart. She leaned close, her hand brushing mine. I froze. "You're not saying something," she whispered. "What do you mean? You look at me like—" She stopped, searching my face. Then softer, "Like you're scared." I swallowed. "Maybe I am." Her eyes held mine for a long, charged moment. Then she stepped back, drying her hands quickly. When I returned to the living room, Ethan was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. 2 days later, Clara showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was pale, eyes rimmed red, holding herself like she might shatter. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice shaking. I led her inside, heart racing. She sat on the edge of my couch, twisting her hands. "Daniel?" She bit her lip, then blurted, "Take responsibility." The words cut through me like glass. "What?" "Clara, what are you talking about?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Don't play dumb. You know what happened. You touched me." My blood ran cold. "No, Clara, I swear to God, I never." But she was crying now, trembling, backing away from me like I was dangerous. And in that instant, I realized everything was about to collapse. Her words hung in the room like smoke, thick and suffocating. "Take responsibility." I stood there, unable to breathe, my chest tight with confusion and fear. "Clara," I said, my voice breaking, "I never touched you. I swear." She shook her head violently. "Don't. Just don't. You think I don't know what I felt? You think I don't remember?" Her hands clawed at her own arms, as if trying to erase something from her skin. Watching her unravel tore me apart, but I also felt a flare of panic. If she truly believed what she was saying, what would that mean for me? For Ethan? For all of us? I reached toward her. "Please, look at me. Whatever you're remembering, it wasn't me." She stared at me through tears, trembling. Then, almost whispering, "I don't know what's real anymore." And just like that, she collapsed against me, sobbing. For hours that night, I sat with her on the couch. She didn't accuse me again. Instead, she drifted between silence and fragments of confession. "After Jason, things got blurry," she murmured at one point. Jason, her ex. I remembered Ethan's warning. "Don't ask too much." Now, pieces clicked together. Jason, the bad breakup, the shadows under her eyes. She told me about nights she woke convinced someone was in her room. About dreams that felt like memories. About voices telling her she deserved what happened. It broke me. Not just the content, but the way she spoke. Like she didn't trust her own mind. When dawn came, she was asleep on my couch, curled up like a child. I covered her with a blanket and sat there in the gray morning light, my thoughts racing. What if Ethan found out she had been here? What if Clara told him what she'd said to me? He'd believe her, not me. And even if he didn't, what would that do to their family? Work was hell the next week. Meredith piled project after project onto my desk, her clipped voice ringing in my ears. "If you can't handle pressure, Daniel, maybe you're not cut out for this field." Every word felt like a verdict. I tried to bury myself in tasks, but my phone buzzed constantly with Clara's messages. "Can I see you? I'm sorry for the other night. I didn't mean. Please don't hate me." I didn't hate her. Couldn't. But I also didn't know how to exist in the space she'd opened. So I lied to Ethan. I pretended nothing was different, joked with him about the Cubs, grabbed beers like we used to. All the while, Clara hovered in my thoughts like a ghost. Then came the confrontation. I was at the office late, hunched over mock-ups for a doomed campaign, when my phone buzzed again. It was Ethan. "Hey man," he said, his tone sharp. "Where are you?" "Still at work." "Why?" There was silence on the line. Then, "Clara's been saying some things about you." My throat closed. "What kind of things?" "You tell me." I could hear the rage under his voice, the protective older brother ready to fight. My palms went slick. "Ethan," I said carefully, I swear on everything I have, I never touched her. Not once. Another silence. Then he exhaled hard. She's not okay, Danny. She's mixing things up. I don't know what the hell happened, but just stay away for now. For her. For me. The line went dead. For weeks I stayed away. I threw myself into work, numbing myself with long hours and whiskey at night. But the distance didn't solve anything. It only deepened the ache. Because despite everything, I missed her. And then, out of nowhere, she appeared again. One Saturday, I opened my apartment door to find her standing there in the rain, hair plastered to her face, shivering. "Clara, don't send me away," she whispered. I should have. Every rational part of me screamed to close the door, to protect myself. But I couldn't. Instead, I pulled her inside, wrapped her in a towel, made tea with shaking hands. She sat at my kitchen table, staring at the steam curling from her cup. Finally, she spoke. "I remembered more," she said softly. "It wasn't you." Relief and heartbreak washed over me at once. "I know," I said. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes were raw, but clear. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to put the pain." Something inside me cracked. I wanted to hold her, to tell her she wasn't broken, to erase every scar Jason or anyone else had left. But I also knew how fragile this moment was. "Clara," I whispered, "you don't need to apologize to me. You need to heal. And I'll be here, if you let me." For the first time, she smiled. A small, trembling smile. But nothing stayed simple. When Ethan found out she'd come to me again, he stormed into my office one afternoon, fury in his eyes. "After everything I said, after everything she's been through, you still let her come to you?" I stood my ground. "I didn't go looking for her. She needed help. She needs family, not you," he snapped. "I am family," I shot back, surprising even myself. The silence after that felt like a canyon opening between us. Ethan shook his head slowly, like he didn't recognize me anymore. "You're choosing her," he said, and I realized with a heavy certainty that he was right. That winter, Clara and I became something we never planned to be. Not lovers, not exactly, but more than friends. We walked the city together, sat up late talking, stitched each other's wounds in the quiet ways we knew how. Every step was precarious, shadowed by guilt and fear. Ethan's distance, my crumbling job, Clara's fragile grip on her own memories. But beneath all that, there was a tenderness I'd never felt before. A sense that, against all odds, we were finding each other in the wreckage. I didn't know where it would end, only that it couldn't last forever. By January, the city was gripped in deep cold. Snow piled in gray mounds on the sidewalks, wind slicing through coats like knives. It mirrored exactly how my life felt. Frozen, brittle, ready to crack. Clara and I lived in that strange in-between, a quiet intimacy that wasn't love in the way people picture it, but something fiercer, messier. She leaned on me, trusted me, and God help me, I wanted to save her. But Ethan's silence was louder than any words. He stopped answering my texts, stopped inviting me out. When I ran into him once outside the train station, he barely nodded before walking past. It was as if years of brotherhood had been erased by a single choice. I told myself I'd fix it eventually, that one day I'd explain and he'd understand. But deep down, I knew some fractures never heal. The breaking point came one night in February. Clara called me, voice shaking. "I think he's back." "Who?" I asked, already knowing. "Jason." He texted me. He said he wants to talk. I drove across the city in a blur, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. When I reached her apartment, she was pacing, clutching her phone like it was burning her. "Show me," I said. The message was short, almost polite. "Can we meet? Just to talk." But I could see how it tore her apart. "You don't owe him anything," I said firmly. Her eyes were wild. "But what if I need to hear it? What if I need to know I wasn't crazy?" That's when I understood. This wasn't about him. It was about her reclaiming the story of her life. Against every instinct, I said, Then I'll come with you. We met him in a cafe near campus. Jason was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of easy charm that made my skin crawl. He smiled at Clara like nothing had ever happened. "Clara," he said warmly, "you look good." Her hands trembled under the table, but she didn't flinch. "You hurt me," she said, voice flat. For a second, something flickered in Jason's eyes. Annoyance, maybe even contempt, but then it was gone, replaced by a smooth shrug. "I think you're misremembering. We were young. We both made mistakes." My fists clenched under the table. I wanted to hit him, to wipe that smug expression off his face. But this wasn't my fight. It was hers. And then Clara did something I'll never forget. She leaned forward, her voice steady, cutting through the cafe's noise. "No," she said, "I remember exactly, and you don't get to decide what happened to me." Jason's smile faltered. For the first time, he looked unsure. He muttered something, an excuse, a dismissal. But Clara was already standing, her shoulders squared. "Let's go," she said to me. As we stepped out into the cold, I looked at her profile. The tight jaw, the tears she refused to shed, and felt a surge of awe. She wasn't healed, not yet, but she was taking her power back. That night, back at her apartment, she broke down in my arms. Not from weakness, but from release. "I thought I'd never be able to say it out loud," she whispered. I held her, stroking her hair, and for once, there was no confusion, no guilt, just a quiet, unspoken truth between us. But in the weeks that followed, the distance with Ethan grew into a chasm. When he finally called, his voice was cold. "I know you've been seeing her," he said. "I can't forgive that, Danny. Not now." My chest ached. "Ethan, it's not what you think." But the line went dead before I could explain. Spring came slowly, melting the snow into muddy rivers along the curbs. Clara began therapy, started writing again. I saw light returning to her face piece by piece. As for me, I left my job. Meredith had ground me down enough. I walked out one Friday afternoon without looking back, my resignation letter sitting on her pristine desk. It was reckless, maybe stupid, but it felt like freedom. Clara and I stayed close, but not as lovers. Something in both of us knew we couldn't build romance on that fragile ground. Instead, we built something different. An unshakable bond, born of pain but anchored in honesty. And Ethan? He stayed gone. Maybe one day we'll find our way back, but I've stopped waiting for it. Some bridges burn too hot to cross again. Years later, I still think about that winter, about Clara's trembling voice, her demand, "Take responsibility," and how it nearly destroyed me. But here's what I learned. Sometimes responsibility doesn't mean taking blame. It means staying even when you could run. It means holding someone steady when their world tilts. It means risking the loss of everything, friendship, reputation, safety, just to tell the truth. I never touched her, but I held her when it mattered most. And in the end, that became the most important thing I've ever done.